All right, let's go over today. It's Thursday, April 13th, 2025. Now was the mystery picture, standards 5 in our homework 3. Your agenda is goodie bags. Learning target, I can divide decimals.
I can divide decimals.
Up to thousands.
Up to thousands.
Essential question, how do I divide decimals?
How do I divide
My
decimals?
homework is to divide decimals. All right, so let's take a look. All right, introduction. Lola had 3 and 3/600 pounds of candy. She's going to divide the candy equally between 3 goodie bags, which really is 3 students or 3 friends. How many pounds of candy will she put in each bag? What equation can you write? Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, Ivy. 3 and 3/600 divided by 3. That's me.
Very good. All right, this is our equation. Let's take a look. All right, did you write this equation? 3 and 36 divided by 3 equals n?
Yes.
Should have written that in your math notebooks. All right, what could be our estimate, or what could our estimate be? So if our problem is 3 and 3/600 divided by 3, what's our estimate? What estimate would you give the answer? Remember, when you estimate, you want to just give a whole number, not a decimal number. What do you estimate? Go ahead, Madison.
Oh yeah, Madison.
1.
Okay, Madison says 1. Yes.
Oh yeah, 1.
Elani says 2. Troy?
Oh yeah, Troy.
Troy says 3. All right, let's take a look. Well, 3 and 3/600 is close to 3. So 3 divided by 3 equals 1. Our estimate should be 1.
Good answer.
We're going to shade grids to find out how many ounces of candy will be in each goodie bag. But before we go on, I want to make sure that you see what I see when I'm dividing. One of the things that I can look at when I'm dividing is understanding that division is the inverse operation of multiplication. I know that I can multiply this number 3 times something to get my my dividend. Remember, this is your dividend, this is your divisor. Okay, so if I multiply my divisor times something, I can get 3 and 3/600. I also know that I can take 3 and 3/600 and say 336 divided by 3. And I can think of my answer in terms of 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is what, ladies?
2.
Is 2. I know my decimal was here, so I'll bring it back here. And there my answer would be here. So I know that 3 times 1 and 1200 would equal 3 and 3/600. All right, but we're going to shade in grids to help us to see or to visualize our problem. All right, so in other words, we have 3 kids, and they're sharing 3 and 3/600 pounds of candy. So I know that if I've got 3, if there's 3 friends and there's 3 pounds, each kid gets what? 1 pound. All right, so I'm going to shade in, and it's going to be a little messy because I really don't have a lot of time to try to make it pretty.
I think Miss Stewart left her folder.
All right, I'm using a different color to represent each of the students. You don't have to draw this in your notebook, but right now I just really want you to watch and see how this is carrying out. All right, so each friend gets 1 pound of candy, but then we have 3/600 pounds of candy that we have to divide by 3. So 36 divided by 3 is 12. So therefore, I'm going to do 12 hundredths pound for each child. So I come over here and I give one child 12 hundredths, so that's 1 and 12 hundredths for one child. 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 12 hundredths pound for the second child, and then the third child, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay? And that would equal 1 and 12 hundredths pound of candy per child. Okay? So each color represents a different child. Alright? Okay, one whole, one whole, one whole, and if we looked at it very carefully, you could see that there were 36 hundredths when we put 12 plus 12 plus 12 hundredths would equal 36 hundredths on the last screen. Alright? We did that. And this is their representation. So 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36 hundredths. If you think back to earlier this week, I had you doing the same thing because I knew that we were going to get here. And this is a direct correlation to what we did earlier in the week. So if you did it earlier in the week, you can bring that together to make sure that your learning comes together to make one big masterpiece. Because you can see that 3 times 1 and 12 hundredths equals 3 and 36 hundredths, according to the colors. Alright, here's your next one. You're gonna do this one in your notebook. You're not gonna color it in. I'll color it in when we get to that part. But I do want you to try to work through the division portion of it yourself. It is very easy. So Eric is going to make keychains. Each keychain uses 2/10 meters of material. If he has 2 and 4/10 meters of material, how many keychains can he make? What equation can you write? Write that equation in your notebook now. All right, what equation can I write? Go ahead, please, Janila.
Oh, yeah, Janila. 2/10. Two and 4/10 divided by
All right, so when I look at this number, remember when you're reading a word problem, you want to make sense of the problem. He's making keychains. If each keychain uses that much, that means that is going to be the number that's going to be used repeatedly. Okay? But guess what? He only has this much. So that means I've got to divide this into groups of 2/10. Okay? So we've got to divide 2 and 4/10 into groups of 2/10. All right, did you write 2 and 4/10 equals 2/10?
So did.
Yes,
Yep.
you did. All right, or did you write 2/10 times n equals 2 and 4/10? Okay, so either one is correct because remember, multiplication is the inverse operation of division. Yes, ma'am.
I wrote it as
I can't see that. So you wrote it as talk to me. Talk to me.
you know how when you divide you have the numerator.
Oh, you wrote it as a fractional part. You wrote 2.
No, Oh, yes.
2 and 4/10. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Divided by
I'm
2
sorry.
tenths?
Yes, no,
You wrote it as fractional parts.
no.
She was talking about the dividend.
The dividend, I'm sorry, I get those mixed up sometimes. When you, the dividend and the divisor, you have it in the, like
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you wrote it as a, within the house,
Long division.
long division.
yes, thank you, that's what it's called.
Yes, a long time when I would teach it, about 10 years ago, we would always say, you put your dividend inside the house. And your divisor is outside, and your divisor is trying to get inside. And we would try to.
You did talk about yeah. Well, you talked about it.
I remember that last year.
All right, here we go. All right, so we're going to color in our keychain for our keychains so that each person has the same amount. Well, I know I've got 2 and 4/10. That means I got this whole thing, I got this whole thing, and then I've got 4/10. Okay? So I got that, and that. And I've got to split it into groups of what? Two what? 10s. Okay? Alright, so I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna shade in 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 2 tenths, 2 tenths. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Thank you.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Well, okay, so 2 and 4/10 divided by 2 tenths equals 12. Okay, write your answer, write it in your notebook so you can. So in other words, how many groups of 2 tenths are in 2 and 4/10? 12.
But wouldn't it be
24 divided by 2.
dividing? But if you're multiplying, it would be decimal.
Yeah, 24
Still
divided
a
by 2.
little confused.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you confused?
Like, so,
tripping you up?
so the 2 boxes that are whole, for 2 whole, and then from the other one, for 4/10, and then you put 0 and 2/10 in each of them.
Excuse me.
I don't understand your question. I separated them into groups of 2 tenths.
Yeah. Is that what you did? Oh.
Girl. Yes, I separate them into groups. That's what you do when you're doing division. Everybody got this? Visualize. Because we're going to do some more of it in a few minutes. That's what you do when you're dividing. If I say 9, this thing drives me crazy. If I say 9 divided by 3 equals n, that means I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What that tells me, I need to put them in my 9 into groups of 3. So my whole number is 9, I put them in groups of 3. My whole number is 2 and 4/10, I put them in groups of 2 tenths.
Oh, and if it would be inverse operation, would it be 3 divided by n, which equals 9?
Inverse would not be division.
I mean multiplication. I mean.
So 3 times n equals 9 would be the inverse. Yes,
Can I come up?
yes. Go ahead and start working through this one. Just write the answer. They can't see.
Yeah, think on the dividend, and there's a decimal, I'm supposed to carry it, so if there won't be a decimal there, then you divide.
You can do that. All right, let's take a look. 2 6/10 divided by 2 equals what? Go ahead, Nia.
Oh, yeah, Nia.
1 3/10.
1 3/10. Very good. So in other words, what that tells me is if I'm dividing this between 2 people, 1 and 3/10 for one person, and 1 and 3/10 for the next person.
So it can be a fraction.
It can. According to what the question is asking. The last question, remember, was 2 decimals.
Oh.
The last question was 2 decimals equal a whole. This is a decimal divided by a whole. Okay, so my answer is 1 and 3/10, which equals 2 6/10. Look, just go back, remind yourself 2 times something equals 2 6/10. 1 3/10. If I do 1 3/10 2 times, it equals 2 6/10. Yes, ma'am. Can go get some more. You've been walking the whole time. I need you to get what you need to get and sit down. Yes.
Okay, so the answer that I got was 13. Is that still right? Or
It's just 13. Look at your picture. It's 2 times 13, 2 6/10.
because I thought you said that you can just take away the decimal and just make it like.
You can, but you gotta add it back in the correct place. Remember, this was, look, the last question, just like she just asked that same question. The last question, look at your paper, was 2 decimals. You divided a decimal by a decimal. This is dividing a decimal by a whole number. You gotta make sense of the question. If I've got 2 6/10, and I've divided into 2 groups, it can't be 13. You see what I'm saying? The picture shows you it can't be 13. It could be a whole and 3/10 because it's 2. Think about your numbers. Think about it. 1 3/10 plus 1 3/10 is 2 6/10. 13 plus 13 is 26. That's not 26. So you want to just make sure that it's making sense. You can take the decimal out of this, but remember, you got to put it back in when you're dividing a decimal by a whole number. A decimal by a whole number, put your decimal back in. Okay? Questions? Yes,
I do the house method.
that's fine, for right now. All right, what time is it?
Just keep forgetting
It's not your phone.
Yeah, I know it's recording. All right, so, let's see.
That was your third time.
2:11. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass out the papers. We're gonna do these together. These are whole numbers divided by decimals. Just put her one there and pass it to you.
Pass it down.
Get one paper to pass it. Pick one pass it.
Bella, Taylor, did you get one? Yeah. You forgot to give one to Madison.
Wait a minute, is that division or is that multiplication?
Bella, when it gets down, you gotta put it up there. Ivy or Marie. You already got one. Stop
Who did not get one?
I think she got two.
Who has the extra?
Bella.
Better pass it up, pass it back up. All right, here we go, ladies, because we only got 2 minutes, and I want to make sure we get through this. You know when you're done. All right, so here, this is a whole number divided by a decimal. This is a whole number divided by a decimal. All right, so this is 2 wholes. 1, 2. And we're going to divide it into groups of 2/10. So you got to look at what it's asking for. So if you got a whole number and you're dividing it into decimals, or tenths rather, or hundredths, you got to look at how am I dividing it within the group, or the whole rather. Okay, so we're gonna put these into groups of 2/10. So the first one, that's 2/10. And I'm gonna shade it in. This is your 2 wholes, so you gotta do the whole thing into groups of 2/10 and see how many groups of 2/10 there are. This is why it's very important to have the visual models so that you can see what it's asking. If you are confused still, change it. 2/10 times what equals 2 wholes. And that might help you as well. Okay, so 2/10, 2/10. 2/10. And you gotta do the whole thing, the whole grid, both grids rather. Alright, how many groups of 2/10 are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. My answer is 10. You put a decimal in the middle, it's still, it's,
It's the same thing.
no, it's not the same, because if you put a decimal in the middle, that's one whole.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, sometimes people put that decimal there, and like this morning, it was like, oh, if I put a decimal in the middle, oh, I still see the 10. For some reason, they got it like, I don't know. But they were like, oh, I know if I put a decimal in there, I still see a 10. I said, yeah, but the answer is 10. They was like, yeah, I know, but they were making connections.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. But they did all of it correct, so. All right, that's number 1. Number 2, I've got 3 holes. And I'm gonna divide it into 5 tenths, groups of 5 tenths. 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths.
Ah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, how many 5 tenths?
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, in other words, 5 tenths times 6 equals 3. All right, and the last one, you have 3 whole groups, and you're dividing them into groups of 6 tenths. Groups of 6 tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Please make sure and be careful, because this morning they did it and I don't know what they were thinking. So just make sure that if you're coloring with different colors, all 6 tenths must be colored the same color. You can't do half here. They would do one color here, and then the other 2 they would put another color. And I'm like, that's not even the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
I was supposed to work fast too. Oh, this might be wrong. It's 4 tenths here, but you gotta add the other 2, which makes 6 tenths. I would think so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, and one more group. equals 3 holes. Yeah, like 5 tenths, 6 times is 3 holes.
Okay, we got this.
Okay?
Exit ticket.
No exit ticket. Just homework. It's 3 of the same types of questions.
Well, that means we have that time.
You're not even done.
I'll get the table. You gotta drop that.
All right, please make sure you do it. It is for a grade tomorrow. Okay?
Did everybody get one? Perfect.